Bugs crashing your pack's party? Whether they've got paws or sneakers, your pack deserves a home that's protected from pests. That's where Wondercide comes in. Plant-powered protection made with steam-distilled natural essential oils that actually work. It kills and repels fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and ants without questionable ingredients or overpowering smells. Safe to use around kids and pets when used as directed. Lab-proven to work fast. And proudly made in the USA. We offer sprays for pets, people, homes, and yards. Plus, spot-on treatments, collars, and even shampoos. Whatever your pack needs, we've got it covered. Founded by a pet parent looking for a better way to protect her dog Luna, Wondercide's now protected over 21 million lives and counting. You might have even seen us on Shark Tank. Go to Wondercide.com and use code WONDER20 for 20% off your first order. That's WONDER20 at Wondercide.com. Wondercide. Protect your pack with plant-powered Wondercide today.
In November 2000, someone claiming to be a soldier from the year 2036 started posting on internet forums. He said he was here to retrieve a vintage computer and warned of civil war by 2005. None of his predictions really came true, but somehow John Titor became one of the internet's most enduring legends. You know how every generation has that one story that perfectly captures the anxieties of its time. For the early 2000s, that story belonged to a man who called himself John Titor. But here's the thing, John Titor never existed. What did exist was one of the most sophisticated hoaxes in internet history, crafted by people who understood something most of us were still figuring out: how stories spread in the digital age. The whole thing started on July 29th, 1998, not on some obscure forum, but through 2 faxes sent to Art Bell's paranormal radio show, Coast to Coast AM. Remember Art Bell? I loved Art. He was basically the internet before the internet, hosting late-night radio for insomniacs, truckers, and anyone fascinated by weird corners of human experience. My favorite radio show ever. These faxes introduced a time travel story centered around Y2K chaos, tapping into that specific millennial dread we were all feeling as the year 2000 approached. But the story really took off when it migrated from radio waves to the World Wide Web. In November 2000, a user called timetravel_0 began posting on forums like the Time Travel Institute. By January 2001, he had adopted the name John Titor, and for the next few months, he wove a narrative so detailed and compelling that people are still talking about it today. John Titor presented himself as an American soldier from 2036, stationed in Tampa, Florida. His story had layers, the kind of complexity that makes fiction feel real. Sure, he was on an official military mission, but he also had deeply personal reasons for being in our time. The military objective was specific and technical: retrieve an IBM 5100 computer from 1975. It sounds like random technobabble, but it wasn't. The IBM 5100 had a little-known feature that allowed it to read and debug various legacy programming languages, something that wasn't widely known to the public in 2000, but it was absolutely verifiable by computer enthusiasts and by former IBM engineers. This single detail became the foundation of credibility for the entire story. But his personal mission gave the narrative its emotional weight. Titor claimed that he was collecting family photos that had been lost during a devastating civil war in his timeline. He spoke about visiting his mother, Kay Titor, and even meeting his 3-year-old self. By anchoring this fantastical military operation in something pretty relatable, the desire to preserve family memories, the story became far more than science fiction. Here's where the John Titor hoax becomes genuinely impressive. From a storytelling perspective, the creators didn't just make stuff up, they crafted a scientifically plausible framework that borrowed from real physics and legitimate institutions. Titor described his time machine, the C-204, as a stationary mass temporal displacement unit, manufactured by General Electric. He provided detailed specifications: dual microsingularities, an electron injection manifold, Celsius clocks, and 3 main computer units. The language mixed genuine scientific terminology with fabricated pseudoscientific jargon that sounded advanced without being falsifiable. The physics behind his claims referenced real work by physicist Frank Tipler on transversal wormholes, and Titor claimed the technology was invented in 2034 at CERN as an offshoot of fusion reactor research. By connecting his story to the respected European particle physics laboratory, the hoax gained scientific legitimacy through association. It's honestly pretty clever. But here's the masterpiece element of the entire operation. Titor endorsed the Everett Wheeler model of quantum physics, also known as the many-worlds interpretation. According to this theory, every possible outcome of a quantum decision occurs in a separate parallel universes or world lines. Titor explained that his travel from his timeline to ours had caused a divergence, meaning his future existed on a separate world line. Any prediction that didn't come true could be explained as something that happened in his timeline, but not ours. This created a perfect preemptive defense against failed prophecies. Believers could reframe incorrect predictions not as proof of a hoax, but as evidence that Titor's warnings had successfully altered our future. This logical shield is why the John Titor legend had persisted for over 2 decades, despite the complete failure of every major prediction he made. And fail they did, spectacularly. Titor's most immediate prediction was an American Civil War stemming from civil unrest following the 2004 presidential election, escalating into full conflict by 2008. He described monthly Waco-type events and claimed the United States would split into 5 regions. Obviously, none of this happened. His most catastrophic prediction was World War III in 2015, a brief but intense global nuclear exchange he called N-Day. He provided specific details: Russian nuclear strikes targeting Washington, D.C. and Jacksonville, Florida, with Omaha, Nebraska becoming the new U.S. capital afterward. The year 2015 came and went peacefully. Perhaps most damning is what Titor didn't predict. A time traveler with military training and access to future history would almost certainly have known about the September 11th attacks. The complete absence of any reference to this world-changing event reveals the story as a product of its time, constrained by what its creators knew in the early 2000s. The unraveling began with a forensic investigation. In 2008, an Italian television program hired a private investigator who traced IP addresses connected to the Titor posts to Kissimmee, Florida. The investigation also uncovered the John Titor Foundation, a for-profit company registered on September 16, 2003, linked to a rented post office box in the same city. Further investigation identified Larry Haber, a Florida entertainment lawyer, as the CEO of the John Titor Foundation, and his brother, John Rick Haber, a computer scientist, as the likely co-creator. Their professional backgrounds aligned perfectly with the hoax's sophisticated structure. Larry's legal expertise explained the trademarking of John Titor and the careful commercialization of the story, while John Rick's computer science knowledge accounted for the obscure technical details about the IBM 5100. The discovery of sock puppet accounts that existed solely to interact with Titor and ask leading questions further revealed the manufactured nature of the supposed community engagement. He would make a post and then log into his sock account and ask himself a question and then go back and answer that question. Despite being thoroughly debunked, John Titor achieved something that most hoaxes never do: cultural immortality. The story became the central plot device in the Japanese visual novel and anime series Steins Gate, introducing the legend to massive global audiences who largely remain unaware of its origins as a fabrication. The narrative has been referenced in manga, music, and video games, demonstrating how a compelling story can transcend its factual basis to become permanent digital folklore. And this honestly reveals something profound about human psychology. We're drawn to mysteries that remain unsolved, and the creator's refusal to publicly confess keeps the story occupying that liminal space between fiction and reality. Looking back, the John Titor phenomenon feels really prescient, not because it predicted the future, but because it predicted how the future would be shaped by digital narratives designed to blur the line between truth and fiction. The hoax pioneered techniques we see every day, everywhere, now. Interactive storytelling, community-driven content creation, and the strategic use of verifiable details to lend credibility to fabricated claims. It represents the moment when the internet culture learned how powerful a well-crafted narrative could be, especially one designed to be unfalsifiable. In our current era of viral misinformation and alternate reality games, the Titor phenomenon stands both as a cautionary tale and a masterclass in digital storytelling. The real genius wasn't in convincing people that time travel was possible. We already think that. It was in understanding that in the digital age, a compelling story could become more powerful than the truth, especially when it gave people something that they desperately wanted to believe. And sometimes that's the most important truth of all.